where do we start with Arsenal? I feel like the best way to start with Arsenal is looking at them pre-season, and pre-season I had them fifth in my pre-season predictions. I'm pretty sure. I had them fifth or fourth. I'm not quite sure. I had them floating around. I had them floating around that area, and the reason, and that wasn't me taking a dig at Arsenal. That was me actually thinking that they were going to improve. Now, the reason I put them in that position, whilst also giving them credit, is because I look at a couple of things. Firstly, I was still quite unsure about Mikel Arteta. I was still unsure. In terms of, I always knew his potential, and I've kind of had this belief and this opinion of him is that if he reaches his full potential, he could be one of the best managers in the world. I was just worried about where his floor was. I was worried about where his base level was. When things weren't going his way, when he was underperforming, what was his level? That's what I was looking at. So that's why I was a little bit unsure about him. I was unsure about the depth in the squad. Of course, that concern still remains. And I was unsure about whether or not this was the season where they take the leap. They start the season off like a house on fire. Funnily enough, which I've done actually, there's a clip on the YouTube channel about this, and I've spoken about this on previous podcasts, or on a previous podcast earlier on in the season. The All or Nothing documentary came out. I watched that in its entirety, and that improved my opinion on Mikel Arteta tenfold. I now, like, that kind of improved my initial opinion, and this first half of the season has taken that to the stratosphere in terms of my opinion on him. I think he's like Mikel Arteta has the ability to be the best manager in the world, in my opinion. He's just so good, but good in different ways, because he's tactically good. I shouldn't say different ways. He's good in almost every way because he's tactically very good. You see that he takes that from Pep. Even when he played, he did have this aura about him being like, yeah, he's going to be a very good coach even when he played. And you can tell tactically he's so spot on. So spot on. And something that he's improved over time, and something which I'm sure you learnt under Pep and has learnt in his first couple of seasons managing at Arsenal, is his man management skills have improved tenfold. You look at the difference between when he first got the job and when he's now got and what he's doing now. The way the players are playing for him, the way he presents himself, his aura, and his just confidence on the touchline, his ability to know what to do with certain players, to me is exceptional. I mean, we saw what he did to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. A lot of people at the time were like, "What are you doing, mate? You cannot be doing this to your best player." All of a sudden, 12 months later, pretty much, look where both players are. Look where both parties are now. Arsenal flying at the top of the league. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang struggling at Chelsea. Big time. So, 12 months apart, something like that. So, that is something which I was kind of looking towards heading into the season, is Mikel Arteta, but I think he's ticked my box here. Like, that's Billy. It's a bit of an inventor there, but he's that box for me has been ticked in terms of Arteta. I look at the depth in the squad. That, of course, is a little bit of an issue. We've seen, of course, Jesus has gone down and Kedia has stepped up. I think that is okay. I think that's fine. You can get away with that. I think you could potentially get away with an injury in defence. I think you could potentially even in that front line, I think like in that three behind Nketiah, I think you could get away with an injury there. Where you can't get away with is an injury in midfield. I think all Arsenal fans know that. But regardless, the depth is potentially my only issue with them. But apart from that, why can't they win the league? They seriously, like... And this pains me to say as a Chelsea supporter. It's weird because as a Chelsea supporter, I despise Arsenal, right? Naturally. But I can't help but look at them and think, fuck, like, something special is going on here. Like, and it's not only on the pitch. Obviously, I've never been to the Emirates, right? But obviously, they have the reports on the Emirates being like this commercialized fishbowl stadium, no atmosphere, the library, all this stuff, right? Well, that was more about Highbury, right? But they had this whole this stereotype around the Emirates being this kind of library. And now you see those fans behind the goal, the clock end, I think that's what they call themselves. To me, I love that. I really do love that. As long as they're not being dickheads, which I know is a very, very big caveat. But as long as they're being just supporting their team respectfully in terms of respecting the law. And are doing it passionately and are doing it partisanly, I think it's great. I don't think it's cringe at all. I think it's great. I think it's very good because you can tell it's having an impact on the pitch. You can tell it's having an impact on the pitch because they're providing the atmosphere, and then everyone around them is thinking, "Fuck yeah, let's get around this. Let's get around this." And all of a sudden, the Emirates has become a fortress. I don't know what their record is at home. I don't know what their record is at home this season. Of course, I know that the one game they lost was away from home. They're unbeaten at home. They actually won every single game at home this season. 7 games played, 7 wins, 22 goals scored, 8 conceded at home. And I think that has to go down to what this kind of aura around the Emirates is kind of cultivating. I think it's great. I actually think it's really, really good. And like I said, the Chelsea supporter in me is kind of like piss off. Like I just stop being good. But the football fan in me and the fan in me that loves stories and loves passion and loves these kind of deeper and loves stories. I feel like I can't really describe it in other ways apart from just stories. There's something in me that is kind of enjoying this. Is it because I don't want to see City win the league again? Probably. Is it because because Chelsea aren't going to win the league, so I don't really care who it is as long as it isn't City? Yeah, maybe. But like, I mean, when we look at that squad, let's look at the team that played against Brighton, right? They had Ramsdale in goal, who was picked up so shrewdly. I know it was for pretty big money, but no one wanted him. They had the English tax as well, Premier League tax, right? So no one wanted him, and he's turned out to be one of the better keepers in the league. Ben White at right back, I know obviously he had a massive price tag on him, but I think he's delivered to expectation. Saliba and Gabriel, 2 very, very shrewd signings. I don't know how much I got Gabriel for, but it couldn't have been much. It couldn't have been much if Flopmobby's going to tell me. I don't think it is, but it couldn't have been much for Gabriel. We all know Saliba has had this kind of tumultuous time at Arsenal prior to this season, but he's exploded onto the scene to be one of the Premier League's best centre-backs. Zinchenko, a left-back, another shrewd signing, taking him off what has come to be a title rival, which is quite funny, and has just improved the composure around the team so well. Odegaard, I think is fantastic business. Xhaka has turned his career around. Credit to Mikel Arteta for that. Thomas Partey has been a rock in defensive midfield. He is one of those players that they needed to keep fit, and he has kept fit, and he's been very, very good. Martinelli, cheap as chips, has turned out to be one of the better wingers in the league. Saka, academy player, you love to see it, coming through the ranks to be, once again, one of the best wingers in the league. And then you have Eddie Nketiah, who has been a player that has been not shunned from Arsenal, but has been kind of, you're like third string. But he came in towards the back end of last season, did an okay job, came in, scored on the weekend against Brighton, scored in the most recent game against Brighton. Just another player that has come in and he's just doing his role. When we look at the subs, Tierney, another great business decision. Tomiyasu, great. El Neni, I mean, I love Mohamed El Neni. Like, just one of those players that will step in, not 10 out of 10. Will just step in 6.5 out of 10 every single game. Will very rarely drop in a stinker. Will very rarely put a 9 out of 10 performance. But comes in, does his job, does his role. No fuss, no glitz and glamour about it. Just does his role, and that is what title-winning sides have. Title-winning sides have just players that do their role, no fuss, bang. You don't need 11 superstars. You need players that can play as a team and create a superstar team. And Mohamed El Neni is a player that can cultivate that and can add to that. You have even the likes of, on the bench you have Lokonga, Vieira, Marquinhos, 3 players who will be part of this next generation of Arsenal players to kind of carry this mantle forward in hopefully with Mikel Arteta if he decides to stay. There's something about this Arsenal team. There is something about this Arsenal team that is screaming they can definitely win the league. definitely win the league. Tactically spot on. There's this momentum about them that has just kept going and going and doesn't look like it's going to stop. Injuries to this point have been pretty good for them, so knock on wood if you're an Arsenal fan that stays the same. But I mean, it would be a great story in my opinion. It would be a great story in my opinion. Because, like I said, even as a Chelsea supporter, I feel like the football fan in me is taking over. I would rather have an exciting competitive league with potentially one of my rivals winning the league than City winning the league. I don't really care that much about City. Than City winning the league by 20 points every season. Maybe that's not because maybe that's because I don't understand. Maybe not understand the rivalry, but maybe that's because I'm looking at it from a slightly external perspective, living halfway across living pretty much directly opposite in terms of the world, right? But I'm sure if Spurs were in this position, I'm sure Spurs fans wouldn't agree with me at all, right? But I don't know. I feel like this is good for football. I feel like it is good for football because, Arsenal have spent. They have spent a lot of money. You can't deny that, right? But who doesn't spend money these days, right? How much money did Nottingham Forest spend when they came up? Who doesn't spend money? I feel like the money argument now, to me, unless teams are dropping 200 mil on 4 players, in terms of 200 mil each on 4 players, there's no such thing as buying the league anymore. There's no such thing because everyone buys the league. So once again, unless you're being extremely like I said, it's 200 mil on 4 players, for example, right? Unless you're doing that type of spending, if you're spending 200 mil a transfer window, 150 mil a transfer window, that's par for the course these days, isn't it? That's par for the course. Bringing 4 players for 30 mil each, that's 120 mil on 4 players. That's par for the course, no? Right? So you can't really use that excuse of, they bought the league. Ben White, Ramsdale, Odegaard, Partey. Everyone buys the league, mate. Everyone buys the league. And I'd rather teams spend a lot of money and take risks. Ben White was a risk. Aaron Ramsdale was a risk. And I'm glad they've worked out. I'm glad that if anyone's going to win the league, it's a team that has taken those risks. Martin Odegaard was a risk, in my opinion. He's worked out, right? So, I mean, you can take a look at risks. Keeping Granit Xhaka was a risk, and it's worked out, right? So this team is made full of risks. There was very little safeness about this team, about this Arsenal team, and that's what makes me slightly more, nice in a way, but slightly more empathetic in a way towards them, because it's not like they've just gone out and bought the best player in the world in every position, where it can't fail, right? Unless I'm managing them, right? It can't fail, right? They've gone out and they've taken risks. Some have worked out, like William Saliba's worked out, like Tomiyasu has worked out, Aaron Ramsdale has worked out so far anyway, and some of them haven't worked out. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure Arsenal fans could pinpoint to a couple of signings they've made in the last 5 years and say, yeah, that hasn't worked out. And they've been patient with Arteta, which is something that I'm glad that they've done, because it shows a lot of teams that just because it isn't working in the first 2 seasons, the thing is with football is that it's next year. If you fail 1 year, you can go again the next. If you fail 1 year, you can go again the next. So it's about being patient, it's about being resilient, and it's about having an idea and backing that idea until it. I would rather, and this is why once again why I'm praising Arsenal, is because they've had this idea, they've had this project, and they've stuck by it. Even in times where it potentially hasn't worked out and Arteta could have been sacked. They've stuck by him and they've been, no, he's our guy. We're going to stick with him. We're going to stick by this project and we're going to trust the process. As a Chelsea supporter, that's why I want Graham Potter to stay, because you need to trust the process, because football doesn't happen like that. Very rarely does football happen like that overnight. You need to build teams, you need to build cultures to create long-term success. Yeah, I mean, you can point to things happening overnight like that. Leicester is one of them, right? Where they turned it around like that because everything worked for them. Obviously, it's in a different way, but was that long-term success? No. What happened the next season? They were battling relegation, right? You look at Liverpool. Klopp could have easily gotten sacked in his first couple of seasons, but no, they trust the process, they trust him, they gave him the funds, and they gave him time to build a culture. And bang, he's had a dynasty of success, which really should have had a lot more trophies than it does, but Man City are in the way of that. It's the same thing with Man City. Pep's first season was a failure, but they gave him time, they gave him funds to build culture. Same with Arteta. First couple of seasons were a failure, but now they've given him the time, they've given him the funds, and they've given him the confidence in terms of their backing. The board has given him their backing, which gives him the confidence to just coach and to just manage without any external pressures, without any external noise, without thinking that he has to change what he has to do to kind of suit narratives or whatever. He's just been given the license to manage, to coach. And definitely coach of the season, probably. I can't think of anyone else. Coach of the season so far, anyway. And they're... How many games left do they have? 21? 22 games left. They've got 22 games left. Why can't they win the league? They're 14 games won, one draw, one loss. Their one loss came away at Man United, and they drew at home. They drew away to Southampton. Like they can so easily do it. Yeah. They can so easily do it. So it was going to be interesting to see whether or not, and this goes back to what I was saying before. This goes back to what I was saying in terms of the reason why I brought those two things up in terms of Arteta, Arteta's flaw and the depth in the squad is because they're the only two pitfalls for me. Because I think the talent of the first 11, everyone fit. I think the talent is good. I think the talent's great. So I like in terms of that goes to the manager as well. When everyone is at their best, the talent's there to win the league. Talent is there to win the league, right? Especially in the current climate of the Premier League, right? So you have that, right? And now you also have so that is why I said okay. Plan A. Plan A is great. When everything's working, it's great. Plan B. Plan B includes what happens if Arteta doesn't get it right and goes through a period where he doesn't make the correct decisions tactically in terms of player instructions, doesn't make the correct decisions. What is his base level? That's obviously a concern, and the depth, of course. The squad depth, of course, is a concern because Thomas Partey or Granit Xhaka could get injured. I can't see it. But they have stayed fit, and I know it's January, so I'd assume a midfield reinforcement has to be in the pipeline, because you're gonna put what? Lokonga is your next player, maybe dropping Odegaard slightly deeper and moving Vieira into that 10 role. El Neni, of course, but do you back El Neni to play 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in a row where he has to play well? Like I said, I really like Mohamed El Neni, but off the bench, cup games, sporadic starts here and there to just come in, fill a job for 2-3 games, I think he's good. If Thomas Partey goes down for 4 weeks, those 4 weeks you're probably going to play 6 games. Do you back El Neni to put out 7 out of 10 performances like he's going to need to in that position? I don't know. Do you back Lokonga to do that? I don't know. That's why you need to bring even someone on loan who will come in and for 6 months give you that quality. Give you that quality for 6 months and will get you over the line should any injuries happen. But no, I'm really bullish on Arsenal. And yeah, as a Chelsea supporter, it hurts to say, but they can so easily do something very, very special this season. Very, very special. Um, yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? It's going to be really interesting because that's what was quite funny about this, actually. Something quite funny happened, right? So on New Year's Eve, I was chatting to a mate of mine who was an Arsenal supporter, and I was like, Arsenal, you guys are gonna have to be on it. This is what I said to him. I was like, you guys are gonna have to be on it from like you can't drop any points. Like you can't you can't lose to Palace away, for example. Like you can't afford those type of losses, or to Wolves at home to get a draw. You need to win those games, those type of games. Because my reasoning behind that was because City aren't going to drop points. City are going to drop maybe. City are probably going to drop maybe 5 points from there for the rest of the season, in my opinion. And then I would say about 7 hours later, Damari Gray bangs one in the top corner and City drop points, which is quite funny. So maybe the league isn't as maybe Arsenal aren't under as much pressure as what I thought. Maybe they can get away with dropping a couple of points because City aren't going to be at the races. And of course, it's pretty much between them two. You've got Newcastle. You've got Newcastle, which is pretty. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why it was silent there, but Newcastle. I mean, Newcastle only 2 points behind City, which is actually pretty mental to think about. And then you got United as well, but no, I don't think Newcastle will win the league. Let's be honest. If we're, I don't think Newcastle will be I don't think Newcastle will be competing for the league anytime soon. Put it that way. Okay, let's not anytime soon. Like in terms of this season, I just think it's too early for them. Yeah, too early for them to compete for the league this season. Although Champions League definitely within the realms of possibility. And I mean, I spoke about speaking of like in terms of people being in a position. Is it Arsenal's league to lose? I've praised them all this time, but if Arsenal don't win the league, is it a bottle job? Are they in that position? Are they in that position where if they don't win the league, it can be considered a choke and a bottle? I don't know. Maybe if they maintain this 6, 7, 8, 9 point lead up until maybe March, potentially. But I do think if they don't win the league from here, you can't consider it a bottle job, put it that way, because of how good City are as well. Yeah, I think that's it on Arsenal. Okay, let's move on.